Secrets, you see correspondence between them. These guys went back 30 years before this. Again, he didn't remember any of this stuff. And eventually, when he was CIA director, this man, by the name of George de Mohrenschildt, wrote a letter to the CIA director Bush and said, I'm scared, maybe I've been talking too much. This is a real letter, declassified document. He says, I've been talking too much about Oswald, and he says, and there's some kind of a net closing in around me. Can you please do something about this? I'm an old man and I can't harm anybody. And Bush is asked by his staff, you don't know this guy, he's some wacko, right? He goes, I do know him, he was the uncle of my prep school roommate, but haven't talked to him in years. He knew Oswald somehow, I don't remember any of the details. Well, you know, honestly, this man is in charge of basically America's national security. He's not curious how his friend knew the man who killed the President of the United States. At least that's some kind of malpractice, if nothing else. Anyway, I'll stop on this subject, but there are 4 chapters in Family of Secrets of new material involving George H.W. Bush, the CIA, the Pentagon, military-industrial complex, and so on, and the circumstances surrounding the removal of John F. Kennedy from office. I then discovered that Mr. Bush, when Jimmy Carter, let me say, by the way, that another thing that surprised me, because you see, I thought Lee Harvey Oswald had killed Kennedy. You know, there's 1,000 books out there. Everybody disagrees on this stuff. You know, what do I know about it? And most of my journalist friends don't know anything either. So the next thing I looked at was, how did Tommy Bush become president of the United States? And what interested me here was, he was a guy who, again, doesn't really seem to have anything particularly to recommend him to be president. He was not a good public speaker. Even I'm a better public speaker than he is. And he didn't have any firm ideas. Do you remember he said he had trouble with that vision thing? You know, he didn't know what he really thought, what his philosophy was. So this is not what we call a great stirring leader. And so he would become president in any case. And how did that happen? Well, the answer was Richard Nixon gave him all of these opportunities and named him to all these posts that created an impressive resume. So I began looking at what was the relationship between them, and what I discovered, and again, there's 3 chapters of all new material on Nixon and the Bushes in Family of Secrets, and what I discovered was the Bush family owned Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon, at the beginning of his career, was launched in, this is again not in any of the hundreds of books by historians about Richard Nixon's career, he was launched on a political career by Prescott Bush, the grandfather, and his investment banking buddies who wanted to remove a congressman from California who was leading investigations into Wall Street practices, funny investment products that could cause maybe another recession or a depression, insurance companies, and they wanted this guy out, and they chose Richard Nixon. So anyway, that's all in there. I go forward, and basically what I eventually concluded was that Richard Nixon was not who I thought he was. He was not, I always thought he was the bad guy of Watergate, and good riddance, Richard Nixon. What I discovered, and again this sounds as crazy as the Kennedy thing, was that I was wrong. And what I found was that Richard Nixon was innocent. That Richard Nixon, when he became president, he decided, this is my chance to create my own legacy. I'm going to end the war in Vietnam. I'm going to establish the Environmental Protection Agency. I'm going to do all of these things. And in Family of Secrets, I actually describe in their memos where his aides are discussing things he's telling them. Beware of the oil industry. The worst is the sugar lobby. These are the people who owned all the great plantations that were so upset about Castro, all the plantations in Cuba. One of which was a company called Brown Brothers Harriman, which was the investment banking firm of the Bush family, and they owned a vast finca plantation in Cuba that was expropriated. All of these powerful families lost out hugely when Castro came to power, and that explains the Bush's power base in Florida, which made it possible for Jeb Bush to become governor there, and I think Jeb will run for president in a number of years, probably win. In any case, this is the kind of research that I've been doing. I was particularly struck by the fact that after Nixon was forced out, he'd been made to take Gerald Ford on as his vice president. And I don't know if you know that Nixon made a joke. Remember Spiro Agnew, one of the least appealing vice presidents in American history? There have been a lot of them. Nixon once said that he considered Spiro Agnew his assassination. Well, what happened to Spiro Agnew? He was forced out of office in a scandal, and he was replaced by Gerald Ford, who was on the Warren Commission and played a key role in advancing that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone in the assassination. Gerald Ford, who came across as very pleasant, and I met him, a very nice man. He was very much working with these interests and doing their bidding. And so they made sure that when they got rid of Agnew, and Nixon was still in office, they put Jerry Ford in. They told Nixon, you have to take Ford. And then, of course, Watergate, and I'm not going to spoil the suspense, but in Family of Secrets, I described the role played by Bob Woodward and John Dean and a group of other people, all of whom had connections to the intelligence apparatus in what I believe was the framing and removal of Richard Nixon in order to move the country further to the right. And when Ford came in, even though Ford was ostensibly more moderate than Nixon, what did he do? He lurched to the right. And he had this thing called the Halloween Massacre, and he brought in a couple of fellows back in 1973. I don't know if you've heard of these guys. Rumsfeld and Cheney. That was in 1974, excuse me. 75, excuse me. And not just that, but then they had some advice for Nixon. They said, why don't you bring back Poppy Bush, who they banished off to Beijing, get him off the stage, and make him CIA director, and that's how he became CIA director. So you see, there's a whole sort of history of this country we're not getting. And anyway, so as my eyes became open to all of this, I kept looking at these things, looked at Jimmy Carter. Somebody earlier mentioned the Iranian hostage crisis, and I began looking at that, and of course that's what wounded Jimmy Carter. Poppy Bush had been the CIA director when Jimmy Carter came in, and Poppy wanted to stay. And his job as CIA director was to cover up everything that had been going on all of these years, including the Kennedy story, and he desperately needed to stay in there. And so he flew out to Plains, Georgia, and he said to Jimmy Carter, would you keep me on? And Jimmy Carter said, no, I sure won't. And that was the beginning of another feud. And they set about trying to destroy Jimmy Carter. And they did it through a guy named Bert Lance and a bank called BCCI. And I go into all of that there. All of these things are connected, folks. It's not a conspiracy. It is not a conspiracy. It is just the way that things work. And what I discovered was that, you see, Jimmy Carter was a nobody. He was the governor of Georgia. He didn't know anything about foreign policy or anything else. Basically, in that sense, a lot like Obama. And he needed advisors. And so he turned to wealthy people who had backed him, including the Rockefellers. And the suggestion was, hey, there's this guy who's a big new Brzezinski. And of course, they brought him in, and then he unleashed what is today the global jihad, the Taliban, et cetera, et cetera. So again, all of these things are connected. But one of the things, I'll look at a few questions later, one of the things Carter did was he had this friend, Bert Lance, and Bert Lance gets ensnared. He's contacted by these people, and they say, hey, we can help you out with your financial problems. We'd like to buy your bank and get you involved in this other thing. And they get him ensnared in this very controversial banking thing that ends up forcing him out of office. And then you have the Shah of Iran, and again, I don't have time to go into all that, but basically, again, there's a banking story there. Where do you suppose all of the Shah's money, which wasn't really his money, was the money of the Iranian people, where do you suppose all those billions were? They were in Chase Manhattan Bank. And so you see, when they had the revolution there, people were so furious at the Shah and Sabak, which had disappeared and tortured thousands and thousands of people. They had a reason to be angry, and so one of the things was, of course, they wanted their money back. And so this alarmed Chase Manhattan Bank because it was, I believe, the largest depositor, and removal of this money would have sunk them, or at least caused them grave difficulties, and so they didn't want the money removed. The next thing you know, a group of students, disorganized students, spontaneously seized the U.S. Embassy. The Carter administration is forced to say, well then, we're going to freeze the Iranian assets in Chase Manhattan Bank. And for the next year, as Ronald Reagan and